We spend our entire lives trying to be someone, only to realize that the greatest power lies in being no one at all. Right now, you are exhausted. You wake up, check your notifications, measure your worth in likes and comments, craft the perfect response to appear intelligent, caring, successful. You curate your image like a museum exhibit, constantly aware that someone might be watching, judging, comparing. Every conversation becomes a performance. Every silence feels like failure. You have built a persona so carefully, so meticulously, that you have forgotten what it feels like to simply exist without the weight of reputation pressing down on your shoulders. This is not weakness. This is the modern condition. We have been taught that visibility equals value, that recognition equals worth, that being somebody is the only path to meaning. But what if this entire framework is a psychological prison? What if the very thing we think will save us is actually destroying us from the inside out? Niccolò Machiavelli understood something 500 years ago that most people still refuse to accept today. The pursuit of being someone is the fastest path to becoming a slave. The modern world has created an unprecedented crisis of relevance. We do not just want to matter, we need constant proof that we matter. Social media has transformed existence into a 24-hour performance, where the audience never leaves and the curtain never falls. Every post, every story, every carefully worded opinion is a bid for validation, a desperate attempt to prove that we are not invisible, that our thoughts have weight, that someone out there cares. This is not vanity in the traditional sense. It runs deeper. It is existential terror dressed up as ambition. We have confused being known with being real. If nobody acknowledges us, do we even exist? The persona becomes armor against this fear. We construct an identity. We polish it. We defend it against criticism and contradiction. We spend enormous energy maintaining consistency, living up to expectations we never consciously chose. The businessman must always appear confident. The intellectual must never seem uninformed. The spiritual person cannot admit doubt. The strong cannot show weakness. But here is what Niccolò Machiavelli observed in the courts of Florence and Rome. The more you invest in a public identity, the more fragile you become. Every attack on your reputation feels like an attack on your survival. Every contradiction threatens the entire structure. You become a prisoner of your own image, forced to act in accordance with what others expect rather than what reality demands. The persona that was supposed to protect you has become a cage. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince about the gap between how we live and how we ought to live. He understood that most people are trapped in the performance of virtue rather than the practice of effectiveness. They care more about seeming good than being good, more about appearing powerful than wielding actual power. This creates a fundamental weakness. When your identity depends on external validation, you can be controlled by anyone who threatens to withdraw that validation. You become predictable, manipulable, weak. The burden of maintaining a persona is not just psychological, it is strategic suicide. Every moment spent managing your image is a moment stolen from understanding reality. Every ounce of energy devoted to consistency is energy unavailable for adaptation. In Machiavelli's world, the rulers who fell were almost always the ones who became slaves to their own reputations, who valued honor over survival, appearance over effectiveness. Niccolò Machiavelli introduced a concept that shattered the entire framework of medieval political philosophy. Verità Effettuale, the effective truth. This is not truth as we wish it to be, not truth as philosophers debate it in universities, but truth as it actually operates in the real world. Machiavelli wrote that he chose to follow the effective truth of things rather than the imagination of them. Because there is such a distance between how one lives and how one should live, that he who abandons what is done for what should be done learns his ruin rather than his preservation. This is the knife that cuts through the illusion. Most people live in the imagination of things. They believe that appearing virtuous will make them safe, that being liked will give them power, that recognition equals security. They perform goodness while ignoring effectiveness. They seek applause while reality quietly prepares their destruction. Machiavelli rejected this entirely. He looked at what actually works, not what should work according to moral philosophy or religious doctrine. Applied to the psychology of identity, this insight is devastating. The persona you maintain, the somebody you are trying to be, exists in the realm of imagination. It is a story you tell yourself and others about who you are. But the effective truth is this: that persona has no power. It cannot protect you. It cannot give you freedom. It can only make you vulnerable to anyone who sees through it or anyone willing to attack it. Machiavelli observed that the most effective rulers were often the ones nobody understood, the ones who maintained strategic ambiguity, who refused to be pinned down to a single identity. They appeared to be one thing while doing another. They kept their true nature hidden while their enemies exhausted themselves attacking shadows. He wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." This was not hypocrisy in the moral sense. It was survival strategy in the effective sense. The relief of being nobody is precisely this. When you stop investing in a fixed identity, when you stop performing for an audience, you become strategically invisible. You are no longer locked into predictable patterns. You are no longer defending a position. You can adapt, shift, respond to reality as it actually is, rather than as your persona demands you see it. This is not nihilism. This is freedom. Why is invisibility a strategic advantage? Because attention is a weapon that others use against you. Every time you make yourself visible, every time you declare who you are and what you stand for, you give your enemies a target. You tell them exactly where to aim. Machiavelli understood that in a world of competition and conflict, the one who can be clearly seen can be clearly destroyed. The one who remains undefined, who keeps their true intentions hidden, who refuses to be categorized, maintains infinite options. Think about the mechanics of social control. How are people manipulated? Through their identities. The patriot can be controlled through appeals to national loyalty. The intellectual through fear of appearing ignorant. The spiritual seeker through guilt about not being enlightened enough. The ambitious through promises of recognition. Every identity is a handle that others can grab to steer you in directions that serve their interests, not yours. When you are nobody, there is no handle to grab. You become uncontrollable precisely because there is nothing consistent to control. The psychological cost of ego maintenance is rarely calculated because we do not recognize it as a cost. We think defending our reputation is natural, that maintaining consistency is virtue, that living up to expectations is responsibility. But observe what this actually requires. You must constantly monitor how others perceive you. You must filter every action through the question of whether it fits your image. You must experience anxiety when that image is threatened. You must waste enormous cognitive resources on impression management rather than reality assessment. Machiavelli would call this strategic incompetence. You are spending your finite energy on theater, while your competitors spend theirs on understanding and exploiting actual power dynamics. You are fighting to maintain an illusion while reality moves on without you. The person obsessed with being seen as intelligent often misses opportunities to actually learn. The person desperate to appear strong often fails to recognize when strategic retreat would serve them better. the identity becomes a blindfold. There is also a deeper psychological trap. The more invested you become in a particular identity, the more you fear its loss, and fear makes you controllable. Machiavelli wrote extensively about how fear is a more reliable tool of power than love, precisely because it creates dependency. When your sense of self depends on external validation, you become dependent on those who provide that validation. You will compromise, adjust, betray your own interests to maintain their approval. This is not strength. This is voluntary slavery dressed up as social success. The nobody mindset inverts this entirely. When you have no reputation to defend, criticism cannot wound you. When you have no image to maintain, contradiction cannot destabilize you. When you claim no fixed identity, you cannot be pigeonholed or dismissed. You become psychologically free in a way that the somebody never can be. This is what Machiavelli meant by effective truth versus imagined truth. The imagined truth says, identity gives you power. The effective truth reveals that identity is the chain that binds you. Robert Greene, who spent decades distilling Machiavellian principles for the modern world, articulated this perfectly in Law 16 of the 48 Laws of Power. Use absence to increase respect and honor. Greene observed that too much circulation makes the price go down. The more you are seen and heard from, the more common you appear. If you are already established in a group, temporary withdrawal from it will make you more talked about, even more admired. You must learn when to leave. This is not just about physical presence. It applies to the psychological presence of a fixed identity. The more you explain yourself, the more you justify your choices, the more you try to control how others see you, the more you diminish yourself. Absence creates mystery. Mystery creates respect. When people cannot categorize you, when they cannot predict you, when your motives remain unclear, you occupy mental space in their minds far beyond what your actual actions would justify. You become significant through strategic invisibility rather than desperate visibility. Sun Tzu understood the same principle from a different angle. In The Art of War, he taught that all warfare is based on deception and that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. How do you subdue an enemy without fighting? By being formless. When you have no fixed position to attack, when your strategy cannot be predicted because you have no consistent identity dictating your moves, you cannot be defeated. The general who commits to a single approach can be countered. The general who remains fluid cannot be pinned down. Apply this to modern life. You are competing for resources, attention, opportunities in a world with billions of other people. Most of them are loudly declaring who they are, what they believe, what they want. They are making themselves targets. They are locking themselves into positions that can be attacked, undermined, or simply ignored. Meanwhile, the person who remains undefined, who keeps their true goals private, who refuses to perform a consistent identity, moves through this competition like water. They adapt to circumstances rather than demanding circumstances adapt to their image. They exploit opportunities that the identity-bound cannot even see because those opportunities contradict the image they are desperate to maintain. The practical steps to embrace the nobody mindset begin with recognition. Notice how much energy you spend managing your reputation. Notice how often you filter your thoughts through the question of how others will perceive you. Notice the anxiety that arises when your image is threatened or when you are not receiving the validation you have come to expect. This is not self-criticism. This is diagnostic observation. You cannot change what you do not see. Second, practice strategic silence. Stop explaining yourself. Stop justifying your choices. Stop trying to control the narrative about who you are. Let people think what they want. Their opinions have no power over you unless you give them that power by caring. Machiavelli would remind you that what people think of you is their problem, not yours. Your problem is understanding reality clearly enough to navigate it effectively. Third, embrace anonymity in areas where it serves you. You do not need credit for every insight. You do not need recognition for every achievement. Some of the most powerful moves happen in the dark. The person who needs applause for their work is psychologically dependent on the audience. The person who can work without recognition is free to focus entirely on the work itself, which means they will eventually produce work far superior to those still performing for approval. Fourth, develop multiple faces for different contexts without becoming attached to any of them as your true self. Machiavelli understood that effective rulers appear differently to different audiences, not because they are fake, but because they understand that different situations require different approaches. You can be warm with friends, analytical with colleagues, mysterious with strangers. None of these is the real you because there is no single real you to defend. You are whoever serves the moment. The ultimate freedom of irrelevance is this: when you stop trying to be somebody, you finally have the energy to actually become something. All the psychological resources wasted on impression management, reputation defense, identity maintenance, they all come flooding back to you. You can think clearly because you are not filtering every thought through the lens of how it makes you look. You can act decisively because you are not paralyzed by fear of contradicting your image. You can adapt rapidly because you have no fixed position to defend. Niccolò Machiavelli was not teaching nihilism. He was teaching effectiveness. He was not saying nothing matters. He was saying that what you think matters: your reputation, your image, your need to be seen as virtuous or intelligent or successful. Those things do not matter nearly as much as you think they do. What matters is your ability to see reality clearly and respond to it appropriately. The persona blocks both of these. It distorts your perception because you can only see what your identity allows you to see. It constrains your response because you can only act in ways that maintain your image. The nobody mindset is not about becoming invisible in the literal sense. It is about becoming psychologically independent from the need for recognition. It is about detaching your sense of worth from external validation. It is about refusing to lock yourself into an identity that limits your options and makes you predictable to competitors. In Machiavelli's framework, this is not weakness. This is the foundation of all real power. Think about what you could accomplish if you stopped caring whether people understood you. Think about the moves you could make if you were not afraid of contradicting your past positions. Think about the peace you could experience if criticism simply slid off you because there is no fixed self to be wounded. This is not hypothetical. This is available right now. The prison door has always been unlocked. You have been staying inside because you thought the cage was a throne. Here is your call to integration. For the next 7 days, conduct an experiment. Stop explaining yourself. Stop defending your choices. Stop trying to manage how others perceive you. When someone misunderstands you, let them. When someone criticizes you, acknowledge it without justification. When you are tempted to perform your identity, pause and ask whether this serves your actual goals or just your ego. Notice what happens. Notice the discomfort. Notice the freedom beneath the discomfort. Machiavelli wrote near the end of The Prince, "Where the willingness is great, the difficulties cannot be great." The difficulty here is not in the action. The difficulty is in the willingness to let go of the psychological security blanket of a fixed identity. But once you truly become willing, once you taste the freedom of being nobody, you will never willingly return to the prison of trying to be somebody. The world belongs to those who understand effective truth over imagined truth. It belongs to those who can adapt, rather than those who must remain consistent. It belongs to the psychologically free, not the reputation-bound. Niccolò Machiavelli gave you the map 5 centuries ago. The question is whether you have the courage to actually use it. Stop performing. Start living. Become nobody, and discover that nobody has always been the only one who was truly free.